Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our show. This is Kenya Updates Live with Maureen and Susan. And Susan is going to be giving us a news roundup of what has been happening in Kenya over the past 2 weeks. As you know, you watched the previous show with Bitangen Demo, and I hope that you enjoyed that. And in future, we're going to have live shows where you can participate and comment. In the meantime, please feel free to comment below and share your thoughts and your views. So thank you so much. We are going on now straight into the topic. So, Susan, welcome to the show. And yeah, looking forward to hear from you. What has been going on in Kenya over the past 2 weeks?
Lots of stuff has been going on. So what started 2 weeks ago has continued into this week. So basically, just to highlight a few issues. In the courts, we've had a lot of adventures with the charges of treason that have been raised, levied against, or there are quite a few accused persons who were involved in who arrested as a result of the protests of Sabasaba, that's 7th July and 25th June. Some of them have been charged with treason. Of course, the charge of treason has been challenged by many council. There were at least over 500 people arrested as a result of that. Many of them already brought to court under those charges of treason. As you know, treason is actually a very, 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 very serious offense. And even when you think about it, you think about, Kenyans, we think about the bombings, Nairobi bombing of 1988, 7th August 1988. We saw the nastiness of that. We saw the nastiness at Westgate. We saw the nastiness at the Southern University. We've seen, quite a few devastating effects. The dissent more recently, so that's what in our minds amounts to terrorism. But now we're finding individuals who have been, still they have to prove that in the courts were involved in the protest. And as a result of those protests, they still have to prove that they were the ones who were responsible for burning down some government installations, like the police stations, not among the protesters. The protesters were peaceful. They had a message to pass, and that's what they were doing. So what they did is they took those guys to court, many of them, and the bond terms were so high, they were really high. And the reason for bond is really to compel attendance to court. It's not really anything more than that, because our constitution says you're innocent until proven guilty. And so they were set so high, 100,000 and things like that, really, really high. And they certainly couldn't make it. Of course, there was concerns about fundraising for that, because we know that can easily turn into a conman's, field day. So, eventually the courts reduced the bail terms. So some of them have been released on those bail terms. Of course, a lot of the people who have been arrested are people who cannot really afford any of that. Boniface Mwangi was arrested. He was in his house, minding his own business, basically. They came in, he found people, listening to the video, he found people with shoes inside his house, and he was like, hey, who are you? Because in most Kenyan homes, when you go to somebody's house, you remove your shoes at the door. But they were wearing shoes inside his house. They arrested him. They charged him with terrorism. But he was released on a 1 million personal bond, which means basically he didn't have to part with any money. They reduced the charges as well. So basically Boniface, and this is the tragedy of it, was found with, that's what they claim, because the wife says those things, we don't own those things. They're saying, like, one round, a bullet with no gun, by the way, a bullet, a tear gas canister with no tear gas launcher, that sort of thing. So they took his children's computers, they went with the homework of the children and did all sorts of things, gone into the, sort of generally just disrupted his household. He was released on a personal bond of 1 million. So he's out, right? So
Yeah,
that's what's been going on.
One
Mhm.
question, Susan, is that, just to put this into perspective, Boniface
Yeah,
is currently recovering from what he went through in Tanzania,
yeah,
from the torture that he went through in Tanzania. He could hardly even walk. Yeah, he's
yeah,
wearing special shoes or whatever he's wearing because of what
yeah.
they did to his feet. Basically the way he was tortured so badly. And
That's
he's
true.
going through a lot of psychological trauma. Who are these people? Who
DCI,
arrested him? And
DCI.
why Boniface specifically?
Well, they're claiming that they're claiming he was a terrorist. And you see that what is so sad about that is that, like I said, the picture in the mind of a Kenyan of who a terrorist is not somebody who is on the streets protesting for their rights, protesting that the
Exactly.
country be run well. And in
Yeah.
fact, even the law protects, the Prevention of Terrorism Act says that if you are protesting, on the streets, that's a different category. That is not categorized as terroristic act.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
something gets damaged in the course of such a protest, it's not a terroristic act.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow they've found a way. The thing with terrorism, because it's such a serious offense, they can hold you in custody for a longer period of time, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to do
Mm-hmm.
investigations and on and all that sort of stuff. But really, my experience when I used to go do back then when I was doing some criminal cases was that the court would not tolerate what they call holding charges, where people are sort of brought into court and told, "Oh, we are still investigating." They would not tolerate that. They'll say, "You arrest people when you're ready. Don't arrest them and then start investigating when you already have them in your custody." So basically, these guys are playing all the tricks,
So they're
all the
planting charges on him, basically. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. They want
Mm-hmm.
him out of the way somehow, and that's my
Mm-hmm.
interpretation. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're making sure he's in custody somewhere.
Yeah.
But I was watching the video even when he was standing, waiting for the bail application to be argued by his counsel. He was very sort of still defiant and said, these are my rights. I'm a Kenyan citizen. I have a right to protest. The people who are terrorists are not us. And of course, he's very
Mm-hmm.
outspoken. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, the Chief Justice had to come out and say, look, the police have to investigate to ensure this is a case for terrorism. And
Okay.
she sort of backed away from it because there was a lot of hue and cry that the courts were supporting such charges. But she
Mm-hmm.
said, no, as a judiciary, we are not supporting it. The police are the ones who are supposed to investigate and bring the matters to court. Ours is to adjudicate the matter.
Mm-hmm.
So she was put on the spot again. Right now, public outcry, the Kenyan people are very aware of their rights, and they will speak up, and they will speak up loudly when they see something is not going right. The other
Yeah.
big elephant in the room, apart from what's going on in the courts, is of course what's happening in the education sector. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there are big issues about, under capitation of education, and of course, the youth go back and say, "Look, there was a time when we were getting a free primary and free basic primary education, and even later on secondary education. What has happened to that?" The government is saying we don't have enough money. So if we can, this is CS Badi, who is the CS for the National Treasury. He said, "Oh, we don't have enough money. Instead of the 22,000 that you're asking per student in secondary school education, we can give you 16,000 something." And basically saying, and then going down the ladder, even for the junior secondary, I was talking about 15,000. They cannot meet that cost. For pre-primary, they're talking about the 1,500 plus. They cannot meet that cost. We don't have that money. And basically, many people are up in arms about it and saying, why don't you have that money when we see so much opulence around us? They're showing, if you watch lots of TV and you're just tracking what's happening around, you see the political class attending meetings in helicopters. And then when they go there, I mean, it was one really disastrous one. Somebody was Kaka Sungura, one of your favorite political analysts. He was there. He's saying, "I was here in this place, and I counted at least 10 helicopters." And then they left 2,000 shillings. When divided by all those people present who were given the 2,000 shillings, amounted to something like 64 shillings each. I mean, really, you come in a helicopter and been driven off to eat a plush lunch in a big car, come back, and then you're giving us this amount of money. Again, that was causing some sort of concern. They're saying, why is education not a priority? That is a basic. It's a basic means. I mean, we know the importance of a good education, what it can do and how education can change the lives of people. Just being exposed to that system, exposed to the knowledge, exposed to the information and
Yeah.
stuff like that really changes you. And gives you an opportunity, and people's looking to those who are educated in their homes, in their villages, to be the ones to pull them out of certain things, to help them to problem solve and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When our education system is at risk like this, and then they're saying, oh, without blushing, by the way, that yeah, so the parents have to pay more. So the question is, they're paying from what? I heard a very sad story, actually. And as you know, there's been a lot of unrest in the schools, right? Some schools have been closed because of unrest. And so what happens is, when the students damage the property because they're angry, and in this particular school I know of, the teachers were beating the students, and they beat one particular student so badly, a Form 3 student. His classmates and they got angry, and they just, they revolted, right? And so when the parents, of course, there was a school meeting and stuff like that. The parents were called and told, okay, fine, nobody's being admitted back into school until you pay this amount of money. So the Form 4s went back first. And when they went back first, they had to have the money that they were asked for in their hands. Otherwise, the child will not be admitted. And this is a Form 4. This is somebody who's, I think they're supposed to be doing exams this year, if I'm not wrong. And they're not admitting the students. So some of the parents really, in the 3 days notice they were given to pay for the money and bring the child back to school, could not raise that money. There were adult men, fathers, crying, begging for their children to be admitted in school. Why should a Kenyan be brought to tears? Because his child has been denied access to school. And what's happening is that I can't believe the insensitivity or the lack of, like they're completely disconnected with the society. They're completely disconnected with what's happening around them, that people are so desperate. And then they're putting this burden on parents again, pushing everything to the parents again about school. So it's told, now you have to pay more. Our government cannot afford to do this. And yet we know that they have money for, for that opulence I talked about. They have money also for to refurbish offices. They have money to renovate State House, lots of money to, do things like that. And yet something as basic as education, which is something like a basic right, they don't have money for. And in fact, it's going from, I've talked about from pre-primary to primary to secondary, going now to the universities is a problem again, because they don't have, it's broke, literally, doesn't have money to give the students to go to school.
Yeah.
And we,
Yeah, I was going to say that I was watching this video on white rage by this lady called Carol Anderson of she's African American, of the Charles Howard Chandler. She's a Charles Howard Chandler professor and chair of the African American Studies, and she's very respected. Carol Anderson. Anybody who has time to listen to her. And she was talking about white rage. If you consider the fact that when Kibaki came to power, his first calling was for free primary education and no excuses. And the government was scrambling within the first 100 days to ensure that there were enough classrooms to admit every single child who was not in school. And those kids got crowded in classrooms. There were like up to 70 children in a class. You would see them sharing a platform or sitting on the floor I mean, the teachers were totally overwhelmed. The classrooms were a mess. But he was determined that every child must go to school. And
Yeah.
Kenyans really send their kids to school. And these are the Gen Zs of today, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because in time, of course, the parents contributed and the government, of course, to increase the number of classrooms, increase the number of teachers, etc. And this now became the biggest cohort of educated Kenyans, I think, since the time that we were in school, I think, the Gen Xers and above. So, what is strange though is that during the same period, we also have the IMFs of this world lending money to Kenya, which is in debt and
Yeah.
cannot even manage its current debts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
meanwhile, we are being made to practice austerity. And this austerity, which is savings culture by the government, the first thing they target is healthcare, education, yeah,
Manufacturing. Yeah.
manufacturing,
Not doing well.
jobs,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
literally, anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now this lady Carol Anderson was talking about the fact it just sounds to me like exactly what happened with the African American.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
you'll find that in African American states where there were predominantly many African Americans in America, the
Yeah.
US government deliberately defunded education for Black children, African American children, and they increased funding for white kids so that to make sure that every single white child had some sort of government support to go to school. So that white children were going to school on scholarship by the government, on taxpayers' money, and black kids could not go to school, could not get the same quality education.
Mm.
Apparently, she was talking about a rating of like, out of a rating of something like 100, black schools were rated at about 10.
Mm.
10. We're not even talking about like at 50 or 60. They were at about 10. We're talking about less than 10% in terms of quality, in terms of facilities. So what it was a deliberate attempt to deny African American children the opportunity to grow and to learn at par with their
Yeah.
white counterparts. And this, of
Mm-hmm.
course, affects the African American society in terms of their level of education. It also
Mm-hmm.
affects them in terms of their crime rate, ability to influence policy, in leadership, and things like that. So, to me, this is just some sort of colonization again, all over again. We know that this happened also during the time of our parents who could not go to school. Many of our parents were very intelligent, but the schools were only allowing up to about 3 kids, 3 children per area to go into a school. So the schools were fewer and the places were only like very limited to the top 3 in the class. So the rest of the people in the class, they went into what they call, vocational education to become P1 teachers, P2, P3 teachers. So they were denied education deliberately. Yeah. And this is what is happening now. And unfortunately, it seems like the leadership has not understood the history of our country. And the reason why Kenyans are calling for the removal of this president, because unfortunately, yeah, he just hasn't read the script. He doesn't seem to be reading the script. He doesn't seem to understand the script. Yeah, which is what President Kibaki started, restarted again. And it's very unfortunate because we have Raila in power as well, supposedly. And he, being a freedom fighter, should have been influencing the situation and making sure that we have free primary education, that it continues, and that if they are not able to capitate the schools, then they should actually just abolish the school fees. Allow parents to pay what they can, yeah, and even parents to pay teachers. Because another thing that is a problem is that apparently a lot of money has gone missing from e-citizen, which is where parents pay into their school fees. All the school fees for the national schools has to be paid into e-citizen. Right now we have, was it 42 billion shillings I saw that is missing? So anyway, I digress. Let me let you continue and maybe you'll give us the
Yeah.
backstory.
The e-citizen, they were told to explain. Because the CS was told to explain where that money has gone. But going back to education, really, so the help is not working. Students are not going to be able to go to school. So the solution they've come up with is really to close down some like the satellite universities and to send some staff home. So the University Association, the University Staff Association, WASU, has come out and said, look, you send a single person home, there'll be no learning in all the 40 schools, 40 universities in this country. They've given them 2 weeks. They can't just send them home when they have failed to prioritize education. And we know that people benefited. The people who are in office today benefited. Many of them benefited from that system. And we know how important education is. So there's that push and pull. We know, and they're saying, oh, the problem is there are more students coming into university and stuff like that. And it says, well, okay, there are more students coming into university. There have also been more people to tax anyway. They're saying, oh, we're not being able to collect the money from the previous people we gave help money. They've not been paying. So they're making all these type of excuses. But remember last year, in 2023, they introduced the new higher education funding scheme, remember? And it was supposed to be better than help, And Nancy Gadongo, the Auditor General, she did a report on it. And she says that it doesn't work. That system is flawed. Notwithstanding the fact that in December 2024, the court said that new funding model was actually unconstitutional because it was discriminatory and it lacked public participation. But she made a few points. She said that the money they use in this new funding model, they use what they call MIT, which is a means testing instrument. And they said that this system is flawed. That particular system is flawed. And then she was saying that undeserving students who are getting funding, including those who had deferred. So they're not actually in university, but they're still getting the funding. And when you've deferred your studies, you're not in class. You've taken the year out, whatever it is. Then she said there was lack of integration between the KUCPS system, that is the university's placement system, and that particular system. And then she said there was problems of people's names being omitted, and then duplication of registration numbers, and also that some of the people who benefited from the scholarships actually did not attend. They did not register.
So there's even duplication of numbers. That means there's some people who are getting help times 2. Yeah, that's what it is. So you get
one of them will get, the other one will not get.
And duplication of numbers. That means you have, oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, this is amazing.
So, and it's really, really bad. So she was saying the system is, it raises concerns about, it's not a fair system. The allocations are not being done correctly. It's also that although the system was supposed to target support through scholarships, loans, and household contributions, it's failed to do that. But anyway, it has been outlawed by the courts. They said that it's unconstitutional and discriminatory, and yet it's a system that was deployed by this government to supposedly an improvement on health, but we can see it's not working. So there's that push and pull and those tensions that are going on in the education sector. Now, coming to perhaps the elephant in the room, was the issue of our growth, economic growth. And there was, for the past 2 weeks, this has been a hot debate, stimulated somewhat by the position of the MP for Keharo in Muranga, Ndindi Nyoro. So the inflation rates, central bank source, 2022 was 6.2%. June 2023 was 8.7%, June 2024, 4.6%, and June 2025, 3.6%. We know that that doesn't mean that the country is doing well. In fact, from our previous shows, we know that when the figures are really low, it means that it's a lazy economy, and it also reflects perhaps that people don't actually have purchasing power. Even though the prices are at a certain rate, they don't have the money to spend. That's because the pay slips are being raided by taxes, and they have less disposable income. Not to mention the employment issues. It's not good. So what now?
Yeah, so these are demand and supply factors. The inflation rate shows you the cost of goods and services. So if the cost of goods and services is remaining low, it means that there's low demand. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
because you see,
people don't have money.
if there's high demand, that's when the goods and services, the cost goes up. So having a
Yeah,
low inflation rate does not necessarily show that you have
no,
a healthy economy. It just goes to
yeah,
show probably people just cannot afford your services. Yeah.
yeah. It has
Yeah.
to be contextualized for sure. That's what we know, because the big question always is that how come you're saying it's like this and we don't have money in our pockets? We don't have money. We can't pay our bills. And so Ndindi Nyoro raised the issue regarding petrol. There are two areas he actually talked about. And he said that the government has come up with a new way of borrowing, but it's not appearing in the normal books of debt. It's appearing like in a second book. And one is through this thing they're calling the fuel levy. There's a fuel levy, where a portion of it, 7 shillings that was added, uh, in was added, is being borrowed against. So the figures, if I can give you, let's say between July and September 2024, the petrol prices, that's last year, were at 188.84. They dropped to a low in April, May this year, to 174.63. That's about, is it 14 shillings or something like that. But then they went up again in July to 186.31. And this source is EPRA. This is the regulatory body that deals with the energy and petroleum in Kenya. So when you do the analysis, the landed cost of petrol is 81.88 shillings. Storage and distribution is 4.7 shillings. Oil and marketing margins, that's for those bringing it in, 17 shillings and 39 cents. Taxes and levies, 82.33%, which is higher than the landed cost. Yeah. So the total comes to 186.31. So when you do the cost analysis, it shows that the taxes and levies constitute 101% of the landed cost. I mean, you're paying double, right? And then the handling margins take about 27% of it. So he was saying that this money, that there was this additional 7 shillings that was added, is being borrowed against. And he raised concerns about that. And then, well, of course, when he said that, there was pushback from the minister, the CSs of Energy, Transport, and even the National Treasury, saying, oh, we have found a new way to, to sustain things, the things we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it. More recently, they listed what they call a bond by Lindsay Finco, of Kenya shillings 44.8 billion. So it was listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and it was a bond that was to raise money to build a 6,000-seater stadium for the AFCON competitions is it 2027?
Talanta Stadium.
Yes, Talanta
On
Stadium.
Gom Road.
Yes,
Yeah. How many billion is it worth again?
44.8 billion.
It was a loan.
No, what they're trying to do, they were trying to raise the money through,
Yeah. Okay.
through bonds. Yeah. So
Oh,
what
okay.
happened? So what happened is that people did not take up the private sector. The people normally buy the bonds and stuff
Yeah.
like that. They
Yeah.
didn't respond well to it, because it failed in their view in terms of, is it a safe investment? And reason being that, there was some sort of insecurity about whether the law could change suddenly about, at some point, the concerns were, is it sovereign guaranteed? Can the law change? And the sports fund that was managing this affect the way it does things? Or could there be changes in revenue collection which would impact any benefits they would take? So basically speaking, the savvy private investors did not invest in it. So you know what the government did? It forced NSSF. Yeah. NSSF
Social,
is
the Kenyan Social Security, people's
NSSF. That is,
pensions, the
yes,
pension fund.
yeah.
So they borrowed money from the pension fund.
They were compelled to buy the bond.
Wow.
So they're telling them buy the bonds. But you
Wow.
know that basically that means borrowing money, right?
Yeah.
So what Ndindi Nyoro is sort of saying is that they're calling these things securitization, but
Yeah.
actually they're trying to hide behind, trying to sort of say that they're not saying it, they're not trying to saying it's a debt. So they're trying to hide from calling it a debt.
Yeah.
But it's actually a debt because we have to pay as Kenyans. So for
Mm-hmm.
this Talanta Stadium thing, calculating is for it's at a 15.04% interest rate for 15 years. He in his view he was saying that Kenyans would have to pay back. Remember, I told you the money is 44.8 billion, right? We'll pay back 100 billion.
Now, Susan,
The
this sounds
Kenyans will pay
exactly
back.
similar to what that same securitization, quote unquote, of petrol and the
Yes,
borrowing forward. The
yeah,
idea of borrowing forward, 15
yeah.
years,
Mm,
ahead. That means that indebting the next government that comes in
the next generations, because
and the
the
next
one for
generation.
petrol is
Yeah.
7 years,
Wow.
and still we'll pay back 100 billion. For this one again, we're paying 100 billion. Then he mentioned there's even another one. They're calling it PPP for roads, fixing of roads. That's coming up again. They're going to sneak this out, and what he's saying is the system they're using is trying to deceive the public that the borrowing is not going up, and that's why it's appearing in a different book. It's not appearing in the book of debts, and that's where the secret is. So he was saying that Kenyans should know that we're going to pay for that 7 shillings the way they've mortgaged, they've securitized the 7 shillings. We are going to pay 100 billion for this other the Talanta whatever. We're going to pay another 100 billion. Uh, and stuff like that. And he's talking about another one coming up. So there's a lot of debate about it and a lot of argument about it. My concern, though, is the truth is not being told to us. They're not being told that this is actually a debt. You know, that this is how much we're going to have to pay. The NSSF people money that has been used now to buy the bonds for the Talanta, that is people's pensions. So what happens when you're due for your pension and you cannot get your payout? These are people's pensions. They're entitled to know the truth.
Yeah, and I also saw that Moody's is downgrading Kenya, as well, and showing concern.
Yeah,
Anyway, I'll put that information up here.
we're still reeling from the fact that we can have a president who can tell the police to shoot people. I mean, I think that was perhaps the most painful thing to hear. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's a
it was,
very careless comment, and it
yeah,
affects a lot of things in the country. It will affect
yeah,
tourism. Not just
yeah,
about tourism, it will affect people's willingness to invest. They talk about diaspora remittances. I saw that the
yeah,
diaspora have said that they're going to withhold. The actually
yeah,
diaspora community is asking people to withhold remittances
yeah,
because of these careless utterances by the government.
yeah,
Literally, three government officials, starting with the ultimate, giving these
yeah,
kinds of orders, creating a situation of insecurity where, for example, I talked to one lady yesterday, just a regular woman,
yeah. Mm,
who said that she's even afraid of walking. People are closing their businesses early, going home early. What happened to the Kenyan 24-hour economy? People are afraid, very, very afraid. So on that
yeah.
note, we want to thank you guys. Thank you so much, Susan, Mathai, for giving us that wonderful roundup. And we'll see you on the next show. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. And see you next time. And comment, remember to comment and share. From Susan and I, it's Kwaheri. Bye-bye.
Kwaheri. Bye. Yeah.
Bye.